Crafty friends, it's Caroline and I am back today with week 5 of Sandy's 13 Frights Before Halloween 2022. We have had some big thunderstorms rolling through here tonight. It is late on Sunday night and I was going to do my usual dress up and film and all of that, and our electricity keeps kind of coming on and off. So instead I've decided I'm going to do a quick little introduction for the project that we've got today. I have put together a fun little memory book slash cookbook slash spell book. That's what we're calling it. But essentially it is a seasonal cookbook that I have put together in the format of a traveler's notebook. So we've got some pockets here on the inside. We've got these little signatures in here that have a total of 10 pages each. And you guys, this is ginormous. Each one of them has a pocket. There are a total of 3 signatures like that. And then there is also a sort of standalone file folder, if you will. It just has the pockets here on the sides. And I'm so happy with the way this turned out. I think it looks super great. And it is going to be perfect for housing seasonal recipes, some photos of the kids throughout the years, and just whatever memories we're making during this season of every year. And I feel like I've got plenty of room to add all sorts of great goodness in here to it. Not only are we going to be making this huge 11¼ by 8¾ inch album here, but we're going to be making this really adorable holder for it that is also going to serve as a home decor piece. I love the idea of having a seasonal recipe album out available, and one that also serves as a memory book where we can add pictures every year. People can just journal at will, and I think it's pretty great. I even added a little pencil holder here on the back of this, so we've got a place for people to just pick up a pencil, and if they want to go ahead and write some notes or maybe put some pens in there, and if they want to draw some pictures or something, they can. And my only rule for the kids is going to be that I want them to make sure they put the date next to anything that they journal or draw or add in any way. And I think it's going to be really cool. I hope you're all checking out all of the other contributors' channels, subscribing, hitting the bell notifications, making sure you're keeping up to date on all the fun things that they're making as well as clicking on the hashtag Sandy's 13 Frights Before Halloween 2022 so that you can see all of the other contributors that may be popping in and out, week by week as they feel like they want to add some little projects to share. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and get into it. This one's really fun. For the book holder, I am going to use these 2 pieces of wooden cutouts that I purchased from the Dollar Tree. And, obviously these are Halloween themed. My intention is to create not only a recipe / memory book for this season, but also a home decor piece, right? If it's going to be sitting out on my kitchen counter, it's nice when things can double as a home decor piece. So for this album and this book holder, this is a Halloween theme. But you could easily change these out. These little cutouts come out seasonally at the Dollar Tree and Hobby Lobby and lots of other places. I've seen them at Target. And anyway, they're readily available. They're very inexpensive. And you could easily do one of these with a wreath cutout. You could do it with a Christmas tree. You could do it with a heart. If I were going to do the heart, I might set the heart on its side. So we've got the 2 straight parts of the heart like this, with the curved part there, with the book being able to slip in. And so it's really nice to be able to change those out with the seasons and create not only a great place for you to keep those seasonal recipes, snap some photos of the kids to include in those recipes / memory books, but also have that sort of seasonal decor that you can change out then on your kitchen counter. To begin, we are going to paint these black. And I am going to use a piece of kitchen parchment underneath so that I have a place to paint on, and I'm not going to totally destroy my mat. There's this little hole up here, presumably to, hang it with something, and we're not going to be hanging it with anything. So I'm just using this distressed texture paste here, and I'm going to put it in almost like it was a spackle. I recently repainted some walls in my house, and I have some actual spackle somewhere, but I don't know where it is and I can't find it right now. So this is going to serve as a substitute right now. Yeah, I don't know where we ended up putting it. So this is going to be just fine. You just take a little bit. I'm using my bone folder to just sort of press it in and then scrape it off so that it's flush with the surface. And if it seems like it's starting to dry and getting kind of a bit of a little dimple in it, then I'll add a little bit more if need be, but I don't know that it's going to be necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on there, let it dry a little bit, and then begin painting. Now that I've got the paint on here, I'm going to need one piece that is 2 inches wide by 10 inches long of chipboard. I'm going to need one piece of chipboard that is 7 inches long by 2 inches wide, and 2 pieces that are 1/4 of an inch wide by 10 inches long, and 2 pieces that are 7 inches long by 1/4 of an inch wide. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark at the bottom, and I've determined that for this particular cutout, I want it to be 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. And so I'm just lining up my 3/4 of an inch mark on this flat part here, and I'm going to carry it all the way across my cutout here. So you can see that I've got this line right there. And then I'm going to simply glue down this 10-inch long by 1/4 of an inch wide piece right at that line mark. And that's what we're going to then end up resting. We're going to glue it down, but we're also going to rest our chipboard on here. And that's going to give it some stability and some strength on that. So I'm just going to apply some glue on the back of my chipboard here. And then I'm going to place it just on that line. Just, you know, the top of it is just coming just to that line, making sure that I'm straight all the way across here. I am. That's good. And just give it a little bit of pressure. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the second one. And once both of those are glued down, I'm going to come along and put a bead of glue on the top side of this piece that we just glued down, all along here, as well as come along here with a really generous bead of glue just to the top of this on the wooden cutout itself. Okay. And so then we're going to take our 2 inch by 10 inch piece and we're going to lay it into this glue. Really just let it sort of get in there, right? Pulling it down here onto that little ledge that we created and making sure that we're lined up with it. And I'm just using my hands to hold it in place until it sort of starts to set. And once I can feel that it's got some resistance and it's setting there, I'm going to come on the underneath side and just run a really gloppy, thick bead of glue on the underneath side. And then I'm going to kind of spread it out almost like you would with caulking. And that's just going to give it a little bit more structure. Okay, so just like that. Come back on the top, do the same thing. Really spreading that out there. Okay, let that set. Oops, I got a little ahead of myself. I forgot to cut the bracing strips for this back piece here too. So the 7-inch long piece by 2 inches is going to be the back side, and we need to have 2 pieces of chipboard that measure 7 inches long by 1/4 of an inch wide. And those are then going to line up here on the back side. Okay, so that's going to sort of create a stop for our chipboard to be able to go up against that. Let me get a measurement on this one. I'm not really measuring this one. I'm just going to lay it down where it doesn't hit these. I don't want to get in the way of the details here for the cutouts. So I'm coming over so that I'm not going to be in that way there. But I want to make sure that it's squared up. So, and now we're gonna take some glue and do the same sort of thing. We're gonna run it on that ledge there of the chipboard that we just glued down. We're gonna run some right along the edge. In fact, let's do both sides of that ledge just to make it extra strong. I'm kind of spreading it out almost like you would with caulking. Getting some contact there. It's just going to add a little bit of structural integrity to it. And then we're going to take this one, put some glue on one of the short ends, and that's going to sit on top of the chipboard, the 10-inch chipboard. Slide that up in there. Make sure I've got good contact all around there, and I do. I want to kind of keep that straight. So I'm going to come in here with a couple of clamps, and I'm just going to clamp on either side of it where I want it to be so that it can't wiggle to the right or to the left of that positioning. There we go. Come in with a little bit more glue. And you can use hot glue if you want. It's going to dry a little bit more quickly. I'm using art glitter glue because it's what I have on hand and because it also works. So that's just what I'm using. But you can use whatever. And now I'm just going to come along with a really heavy bead of glue right along the top of both of these chipboard pieces. So this longer one, this 10-inch long one. And then also on this 7-inch long one. And I'm not worried if the glue's seeping out the sides or anything. I can always come and clean it up later, but it's also just going to get covered with paint, so it's not going to matter. And then make sure our glue over here is still good. I had to tear that off. I got a little ahead of myself. Make sure we got a nice amount there. Okay. And then this is going to set on here. Or let's stand it up. Bring it into each other. It's going to set right there. They're going to come together just like that. And now I'm going to take my last little 1/4 of an inch piece. I put some glue on here. And yes, I glued it on the wrong side. So I ripped that off. I had glued it on the wrong side. Make sure you're doing the mirrored image side of it, not the same image side of it. But if that happens, see, it's easy. You just peel it off, and we're just going to go over it with some more black paint anyway. Then we're going to end up distressing it. So it's going to be just fine. And I am slipping this one on the back side of that 7-inch long piece. So see, I've just slipped it right in here, okay? I'm going to kind of press it into place. And then once again, I'm going to come over it with some glue on where it meets the chipboard, that 2-inch wide chipboard, and then also where it meets the wooden cutout. Kind of smoothing that out almost if it were caulking. Check the inside. We look good. That looks good. And so now I'm just going to set this aside and let it dry. I don't think I need to clamp it any. I was thinking if I did, I could come around with some rubber bands or some elastic and sort of tie it together. But it seems to be doing pretty well. Really, all it needs is some time for that glue to just set and firm up, and we should be good to go. And then this is what is going to hold our little recipe / memory album in here. So let's go ahead and set this aside for now. the base of our book, we're going to need 2 pieces of medium weight chipboard that measure 8 3/4 by 11 1/4, and we're going to need 1 piece of medium weight chipboard that measures 11 1/4 by 1 3/4. To wrap them, we're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 12 inches by 10 3/4 of an inch, and that's for the front and back cover. And for the spine, we're going to use 1 piece that's 12 inches by 5 3/4. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I attach my front and back cover to my spine using a version of the lay flat method that was designed by Tamara Merrill. And in her method, you add 3 inches to the width of your spine so that you'll have 1.5 inches as sort of a wing attachment piece on either side to attach to the front and back covers. Because this is such a large book, and because I just wasn't sure how, I just been trying to give it a little bit more structural oomph to it, I went ahead and increased that by 1 inch. And I'm going to show you how that's going to change the way we use the spacers and how we wrap it, because we've got to add 1/2 inch to our spacer width there in order to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and start with that spine piece first, since that's really the major divergent from that, although there's going to be a slight modification on the front and back cover as well. To begin with, we're going to place our paper in our scoreboard, and I wrote on the wrong side of the paper. This is the side that I want to be the front, so I'm going to flip that on over. And we are going to use our spacers like I mentioned. Now we're going to use the 1 inch spacer at the top. For the spine, we would do a 1.5 inch spacer on the side. Because our spine is 11 1/4 inches tall and our paper is only 12 inches tall, that only gives us 3/4 of an inch to wrap around the top and the bottom of our spine. And if we were to divide that evenly, that's only 3/8 of an inch that we have available at the top and the bottom. So how I'm going to solve that is I'm going to use some of these other spacers that I also purchased from Country Craft Creations. And these are a set where you have 2 that are 1/4 of an inch wide. You have 2 that are 1/2 inch wide. And you have 2 of them that are 3/8 of an inch wide. And we're going to need to do 3/8 of an inch at the top and the bottom. So I'm simply going to take one of the 3/8 of an inch spacers and I'm going to place it at the top. Now, I increased the width on the spine covering as well because I wanted to increase the width of the wings. So this paper here is 5 3/4 of an inch wide. Our spine is 1 3/4 of an inch wide. So that means I should have a 2 inch overhang on either side instead of a 1.5 inch overhang on either side. I have this spacer here that measures 1.5 inches, and I'm going to make up the difference by taking one of the 1/2 inch spacers and just laying it next to that. So by being able to use both sets of spacers that again are available at Country Craft Creations, I'll have the link in the description notes below, by using those 2 sets in combination, I'm able to achieve different spacing aspects for whatever my wrapping, my album wrapping needs are. And in this case, I'm kind of pushing the envelope. We have 12 inch, paper, and I've got a 11 1/4 inch height on this. So this is going to work out for me. I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on the back of here and stick it down just like we would with any other album wrapping. And I'm pressing it into this corner just like I would in any other situation. If you're concerned that this might bow out over here, you can always take the second 1/2 inch spacer here and place it down as well, but it's really lining up quite well. And then we now have our spine piece centered on our spine wrapping piece. And so that worked out pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and continue to process this in wrapping my spine in the same way I do for all of them. I'll have other videos linked in the description notes below if you want a little bit more detail on this, but I'm going to kind of rush through it. I'm going to take a little bit of time here at the top and the bottom because it doesn't give us a lot. We've only got 3/8 of an inch, remember? And so I really want to make sure that I can get that folded well and that it is wrapped all the way around. And I'm gonna cut out my little rectangles just like I normally would. And then we're just gonna apply glue like we normally would and glue down the top and the bottom only for the spine here. So we're gonna wrap this piece around to the inside of the spine. And that is the two pieces at the top and the bottom. Oh, I got a lot of glue. I'm used to a lot more paper and needed to adjust with less glue. I'll just go ahead and lift that up. There we go. Make sure we're squaring that up pretty good. Come around over here. Put our glue down. Stand it up, wiggle it, bend it over, smooth it out. I'm not sure that I'm going to get used to such a small little piece, but it's okay. Let's lift that up. Really make sure we got that smoothed out. Okay, and so then the last step is to come along here and just smooth this out from the right side, where we're really working that paper to start sort of wrapping around the chipboard so that it becomes flush at the bottom of the chipboard rather than the top where it's currently attached. Now for the front and back cover, we've got the two pieces of chipboard that measure 8 3/4 by 11 1/4, and they're going to be wrapped with two pieces of paper that measure 12 inches by 10 3/4 of an inch. And so we're going to put it in our scoreboard on the 10 3/4 inch side because it needs to be 12 inches tall. And we're going to run into the exact same situation here where I've got a piece of chipboard that's 11 1/4 inches tall, and the only thing I have to wrap it with is 12 inches. So I need a piece that is 3/8 of an inch as my spacer. So I'm going to place my 3/8 of an inch spacer at the top here. And in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and put both of them up there so that I've got it running the full length, right? And then on the sides here, I can go ahead and use my 1-inch spacers. I've cut it in such a way that it's allowing for that. And so the regular 1-inch spacers are gonna work just fine. So I'm gonna glue this down just like I normally do. So now we're just gonna place it down here, press it up into those spacers in that corner, making sure that we are nice and centered. I'm gonna go ahead and take my burnishing tool and smooth it out just like I normally do. And I'm going to come around from the right side with my bone folder, making a crease right up along next to the chipboard. Stand it up, bend it over, really give that paper a nice firm burnishing. We want to really crease that edge right along there. It's not a lot of paper. We want to make sure it's in position correctly. And then we're going to cut these little rectangles out that are in the corners. Normally the front and back cover, it's a square that we're cutting out, but because this paper is shorter than the usual 1-inch reveal all around, it results in a rectangle. Clean up our edges by angling ever so slightly. And then usually I miter my corners at this point, but because this is such a very tiny piece of paper, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and glue the shorter ends down first, so the top and the bottom, and then we'll just glue down the other two sides. And once I have both my front and back cover wrapped, it's time for us to attach them to the spine. And I'm going to do that in the same way as I do my other albums, which is the way that Tamara Merrill does hers for her lay flat method. And I'll have a link in the description notes below for the tutorial that I do on showing how I do this, as well as Tamara's tutorial for how she does it as well. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to come along here about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the chipboard that is our spine. And I'm going to just lay down some glue right there in a line that's about 1/4 of an inch away, roughly. And then fill in all the rest of it with glue. And this is a big surface area, so you've really got to make sure that you go back over the first bit that you put down and make sure it hasn't already dried, because it will dry pretty quickly. And then we're going to take a very thin bead of glue and we're going to run it right along about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the front or back cover, whichever one this ends up being. And I'm being kind of sloppy here. I don't mean to be, but it's just happening. And I'm not going to stress about it. I'm going to come along here with my thumbnail and I'm just going to pull that back, make sure I don't have any glue in that little space there on the last 1/8 of an inch. Place it down. Oops, I definitely don't want that. Place it down right next to my chipboard of the spine. Get it right up next to it and press it in. Once I've attached my front and back covers to my spine, now it's time to put some paper on the inside, and this is going to give it some structure as well as cover up our seams and just, you know, give it a little bit more, just a little more strength, right? So I've got 2 pieces here. One of them measures almost 11 1/4 because I want to come almost all the way to the edge on these by 12. And the other one is like 5 5/8-ish by 12. And the reason I cut them this size is they will fit next to the piece that we wrapped over, this larger piece that we wrapped over. So it's butting up against there. So I've got a flush surface. I'm not going to end up with that weird ridge there when you cover the papers over like that. And this just brings it all up to the same level and is going to spread it out to the edges here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing and stick this down. And once we got all that stuck down, then I'm just going to take my bone folder and run right along where that front and back cover connect with the spine and just help crease that along there. And I think I figured out what all this white stuff is. It only shows up on the black paper for some reason. And I think it might be some sizing that's on the paper. I'm not 100% sure, but it almost has like a... Have you ever had, you know, where you apply starch to fabric and it like flakes off if you don't let it set in? That's kind of what it seems like it is. But it doesn't seem to affect the paper any at all, and it works just fine. It just makes kind of a mess. So I'm just going to keep working that back and forth as I'm increasing the acuteness of this bend. You can see it wipes right off. It's just the weirdest stuff. And then once I've got that, I kind of work it. And we have got a really nice album base made here. And it's a large album base, y'all. This thing has a 1 3/4 inch spine. Plus we've got the 2 sides here of the front and back cover. And that adds up. We're going to end up with 2 inches wide, and this is going to just fit inside of our case that we built for it. Now that we've got our case built, let's go ahead and start working on the books that are the inserts, on the notebooks that we're going to insert into this. This is essentially going to be put together just the same way that I've put together traveler's notebooks in the past. I'm going to do a series of hole punches at the top and the bottom of the spine, but I'm not going to put any in the center of the spine because on this one I've decided I wanted to do a tie closure. I'm using my centering ruler. I'm going to come up 3/8 of an inch from the top and the bottom, and I'm going to make 3 marks here at the top and the bottom. And I'm going to draw that line all the way across. And at the 0 mark, I'm going to make a little tick mark, and then I'm going to come over 1/2 inch to the right of the center, and I'm going to come over 1/2 inch to the left of the center. And that's going to be where we're going to place our 3 holes. I'm going to make the same mark at the top. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with this hole punch to make a preliminary punch, just because I feel like I have a little more accuracy in seeing the hole when I do it this way. It also gives me a little bit of a contrast to see through the punch when I make the second hole. And in fact, when I did this the other day to try to just show you guys and accentuate where that hole was going to be, I used one of these gel pens and it showed up so nicely. I want to do it again. And so I just want to make a little dot here, right where I want that hole on all 3 of them, so that it's going to show up a little bit easier for me, so that I'm going to be able to see that through my hole punch a little bit better. So the dots are right on the line and spaced at those 3 tick marks that we made. And now that I can see the hole a little better, I'm gonna go ahead and line this up so that my little dot mark is right in the center, and punch that. Do the next one. This is the collection that I'm going to use for this book, and there aren't really any metallic accents in this, but there is like a really shiny black on here, and so I'm kind of thinking that I could probably do the silver as well as maybe a mirror finish black or a black glitter paper with it. Let's go ahead and go with the silver. I feel like it'll go with everything else in the collection anyway, so that'll be just fine. We're going to locate the center here, put down a piece of tape, and then I'm going to attach 2 pieces that are 15 inches long there at the center on the front and back cover, and I'll be right back. I decided to use this paper as a matting. I think this is really cool, and it is a Cricut True Brushed paper is the brand and the style of it. This isn't the collection from it. I don't know what happened to the original packaging for this one, but I had a few pieces of some black remaining from a different collection. If I can find it, I'll list it in the description notes below. The front and back cover are 11 1/4 by 8 3/4. I'm going to cut this down to 11 1/8 by 8 5/8, and that's going to give me just a 1/8 inch reveal, or 1/8 inch smaller, which was actually going to translate to a 1/16 of an inch reveal all the way around. But I'm just comfortable with that. I want it to come as close to the edge as possible. If you want to bring it down farther than that, please feel free to do so. You could easily do 8 1/2 by 11, and that would be absolutely fine. And you'd have a 1/4 of an inch, which would translate to an 1/8 of an inch reveal all the way around. I'm going to go ahead and cut these and get them ready to attach. Now that we have our matting paper attached to our front and back cover and our spine, we are ready to put our decorative paper in place. And I've chosen to use this as the background layer. I'm doing several matting layers on this. I want to give it a lot of depth here. You don't have to do this. You can do very simple matting if you like, or you can do none at all. It really doesn't matter. This piece here is cut to 8 1/2 by 11. And then I've got a little book plate here that I put together that will be included in the cutting guide. It's going to be part of a free PDF download that is going to be an accompanying cutting guide to this project. And you can increase or decrease it to scale as you like. It's just a PDF, but I went ahead and just printed this out as it's going to be on that cutting guide for you. And I printed it onto 8 1/2 by 11 cardstock. And this is that matte gold cardstock that's available at Michael's. And I'll have a link for that in the description notes below too. So that if you're interested in that, you can find that. It printed really well. I was very impressed with the way it printed. I've trimmed down the printed paper here down to 6 7/8 by 8 3/4. And then I've cut some matting layers behind our book plate. And the first one I cut to an inch larger. So it's 7 7/8 by 9 3/4. And this paper I pulled from a different collection. This is actually from the latest Country Craft Creations paper, and it is called Midnight Potions, I think. I'm not sure. I'll type it down here in the editing. But I needed some purple, and I like this particular pattern because it's not just a solid purple. It's got some depth and some texture to it. And so then the black paper that I went ahead and cut, I cut an 1/8 of an inch larger than that so that I've got a little 1/16 of an inch reveal of black around here just to sort of frame it a little bit more. And as I'm looking at this, I'm kind of debating on whether or not I want to do yet another layer here around the gold. And I may end up doing that, I'm not sure. I'm going to ink the edges, glue it all down, and I'll be right back. I did decide to go ahead and put a matting layer behind this book plate. I just thought it looked nice to have that extra little definition of a black line around there. But I didn't want to waste any paper, so I cut it out of the center of the matting layer for the purple paper. So that just made it really nice and easy. I was able to sort of harvest that out of there without feeling like I had to cut into any more paper. And so I'm going to go ahead and center these on here and glue them down, glue down the pattern paper for the spine and the back, and I'll be right back. We've got our front and back cover decorated, and I think it turned out super cute. I love the way it looks. I've chosen the pattern paper that I want to put on the inside here, and I've got these pieces cut to 8 5/8 by 11 1/8. And spine piece here is cut to 1 5/8 by 11 1/8. Those are our inside pattern paper. pattern paper pieces. And then I want to do an angled pocket here. I'm using 12 by 12 cardstock here, but I mean, it's kind of silly that I'm using 12 by 12 cardstock because I'm starting with an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. It was just a scrap that I had, so it happened to work out like that, but you would probably be better off using an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. So I want this pocket to go at an angle like this. This pocket is going to be an angle like that, but we're going to flip it over so I've got a mirror image. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to come over an inch on the tops here and angle cut them like that. So I'm going to come over an inch from the top left, and I'm going to make a mark. And I'm going to come over an inch from the bottom right and make a mark there. And we're going to cut from mark to mark so that we get two pieces that are identical here. So now I've cut my piece here from my two marks that I made, and what that's going to give me is that's going to give me a mirror image on each side so that I can make some pockets to go into our book here. And the next step is going to be to score them, but we've got to be careful that we're scoring them in a mirror image. So we're going to place this in our scoreboard in sort of a weird way, where I've got this 1 inch little nub here at the top of our scoreboard, and we're going to score that at 1/2 inch over here on this left side, all the way down. And then we're going to turn it around so the 11 inch part is at the top there, and we're going to score it at 1/2 inch on the bottom here. Okay. And once those get folded over, that's going to be the pocket for the inside front cover. And then the pocket for the inside back cover. We're going to go ahead and score that at 1/2 inch on this 1 inch little side up here. Okay. And then we're going to score it at 1/2 inch here at the bottom. But because I'm going to fold this in an opposite direction, I'm actually going to turn it over and score it from the back side, which will be the right side when we do this one. Turn it around like this. There we go. And then that way we're able to score it a little bit easier in the direction that the paper's going to want to fold, or we're going to be able to fold it a little bit easier in that direction since we scored it on the proper side. And so we're going to fold and burnish all of our score marks. And once we have folded and burnished all of our score marks, we've got two pieces that look like this. And we're going to trim some of this bulk here from the back. So with the bottom piece that folds up, I'm going to place my scissors right at that score mark and cut at kind of a 45-degree angle out, open it back up, and cut it again so that I've got this little notch that I've cut out of that corner. So when it folds over, I don't have quite so much bulk there. And then in a similar way over here where we've got this angle kind of sticking up, I'm just going to cut a little bit of that off. We don't need it. We're going to end up wrapping it around the pattern paper anyway, but I just wanted to get it out of the way. And up here at this little tab up there, I'm just going to cut a slight angle off of that one as well, if you can see that. So I'm going to trim the other one in the same way. And now that we've got our pieces trimmed, it's time for us to go ahead and start putting them into our book. And the way I'm going to do this is actually to wrap the pockets around the paper that's going to line the front and back inside covers. So I'm going to place our pattern paper inside of the pocket, pressing it right up against those folds that we just made, making sure that we've got it really snuggled in there tightly, laying it out on our paper, making sure that we're still centered and everything looks good, and I like that. And now that I've dry fit it and everything looks great, I'm going to go ahead and glue it inside of our pockets. Now I've gone ahead and inked all the edges on my pattern paper, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it inside of this pocket here, and I'm going to press it up all the way up against this bottom fold and all the way up against this side fold. And so I'm really putting it into that corner, making sure that I'm coming all the way to the edge of the paper on the folds. And I like that. I think that all looks really great. So now I'm going to glue down these little flaps onto the back side of our pattern paper here. And then once we've got that glued down, it's super simple to just go ahead and glue this whole piece down, this whole pattern paper piece down onto our inside front cover. And we've already got our pocket in place, and there's nothing that's going to keep anything from, nothing's going to bump into stuff as it's going in there, because we've got our pieces of paper wrapped around to the back side. So it's going to be super smooth like that. I'm going to do the same thing to the other one and get those glued down. Now that we've got those glued down, and I did go ahead and put some clamps around the edges here because that's just a lot of kind of bulky folded paper, and I wanted to make sure that that got adhered really nice and tight. We've got our front and back inside covers all covered. And now I want to go ahead and put some pattern paper on the matting here for these pockets. I've cut this piece here at, what does this turn out to be? It is 10 and a little bit past 10 1/4. And how I do this is most of the time I don't measure. Now I'll give you guys measurements in the cutting guide, but most of the time I'll hold my paper up and I'll just take my pencil and make a tick mark on where I kind of want that to end. And so that's pretty much what I'm going to do over here as far as where I want this angle to begin. I know that this began at a 1 inch piece. We scored it at a 1/2 inch with the fold and everything. It's not always still a 1/2 inch. So I find it's just a little bit more accurate for me to go ahead and make that mark on here. And then I'm going to make a corresponding mark down here where I want that angle to end. And then I'm just going to cut my angle from that point to this point. Now I chose this paper because I like this little image over here in the corner. It's going to fit nicely on our pocket. But I also chose this paper because if you flip it over on the back side, this paper is not directional. So I'll be able to then use the cutoff piece, flip it over this way so that I can cover the mirror image side here of our pocket over here. So I'm going to go ahead and make those cuts and I'll be right back. So as you can see, this one fits over here just fine. And then if I go to flip this one, I'll be able to set it in the same place over here. And now all I need to do is make the mark for my cut that's going to go here on this far right side. I'm going to lay it out where I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and make a little tick mark and then make that cut. All right, we now have our inside and outside front, back, and spines covered with all of our pattern paper, and I think it looks really great. I'm so happy with the way it's turning out. Now it's time for us to go ahead and punch our holes and insert our grommets. If you've watched my channel before, you know that I have terrible luck with the crocodile, and also when going through so many layers like this, I think it's just better to use more traditional tools. I'm going to need 6 of my grommets and 6 of my washers, and I just use this when I'm using my grommets because that way, as you can see, I've got some little puncture holes. That way I'm not puncturing into my everyday cutting mat. It's just specifically for when I'm using a hammer. And so we're going to turn this over and look at where our holes are marked here. And the top one's looking pretty good. The bottom one I got a little bit crooked. So let's start with the bottom one. I'm going to try to make up for some of those crooked marks down here where I put my hole punch. The first hole punch that I made here is only a 1/8 of an inch hole punch. And this one here, I think might be like 3/16 of an inch. I'm not sure. It's a little bit larger. Line it up here so that I've got my height correct. Move this over a little bit. That one is correct. It's this one that needs to move over a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of go over it slightly askew from where it was. Give it about 7 or 8 taps. And then once I've got my hole punched, I'm going to go ahead and clean it out. And as you can tell, there's a lot of layers there. We've got chipboard and cardstock and our matting layers of cardstock, and there's just a lot of layers there. So it is a lot to go through. You may have to give yours a few more taps than I'm giving mine. It depends on what kind of hammer you've got, how hard you're tapping, but just tap away till you get through. And if you have a little pokey tool like this, they work great because you can just go in there and clean out those holes. I did still get that a little bit crooked, but it's going to be okay. It's really going to be just fine. I'm going to flip it over and do the 3 holes then at the top as well. Now we've got all of our holes punched and it's time to install our grommets, and we do that by putting the pretty side on the outside, and then we're going to flip it over. Then you're going to put it on here, and you want to make sure that this metal piece from our from our grommet is able to come all the way through. So I'm going to take my bone folder around and I'm just pressing down the pattern paper and the chipboard and all of that stuff that's in there. I'm pressing it all down around this grommet so that it protrudes above the surface so that I have something for it to grab a hold of. And then we're going to put the washer on and it's going to be the ring facing up. So ring side up. And it all gets set down on top of this little tool here, our kind of base tool here. Then we're going to take our setting tool. The first one was our cutting tool. Then we're going to take our setting tool. We're going to place that right over the top and give it several good whacks. And there we go. We've got that set in place and it looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and do the other 5 and I'll be right back. And now we've got all of our grommets installed and I think they look really great. I'm going to go ahead and put these tools away. And now it's time for us to go ahead and lace our cording here to hold our books and our folders that we're going to put in here. That's going to be what we use for our recipes and our photos and everything that we're going to be putting in this little album. Or actually, it's kind of a large album. So instead of using regular elastic, which I could just use elastic cording, that would be just fine. I'm going to use this lace elastic because I think it's just going to add a really nice little kind of almost spooky but elegant effect to it. And I'm not sure what this is for. I feel like it's for some sort of sewing purposes. I bought it on Amazon. I'll put the link in there. But doesn't it also sort of look like there's a skull face in here? Let me see if I can get this where you guys can see it. I think it's meant to be a flower, but I don't know. I think it looks kind of like a skull. Do you guys see that? So I'm going to go ahead and use this to lace through our little holes here. And how I do this is I come in through the bottom center, or I guess out. So starting on the inside of the book, I'm going to go out through the bottom center. And I'm going to need a pretty decent size length here, but I don't know how long yet, so I'm not going to cut it yet. And then I'm going to come back in through the bottom left, just like this. And then I'm going to go out through the top left, just like this. Okay. And I want to kind of try to keep it straight as I'm going along. So I'm thinking we'll just let this lace face out this way. This is looking so cool. And then we're going to come back in through the middle top. Okay. And then I'm going to go back out through the same hole that we first, went through. So I'm going to go back out through this bottom center hole. There we go. And then I think we might need a little bit more slack here. So I'm going to kind of pull this a little tight, pull this one. Yeah, we're going to need just a little more slack. So I'm not really loosening it up. I'm just shifting the tension, I guess I'll say. I'm moving the tension on down the line here so that I've got enough here. And now I'm going to come back in through this bottom right, just like that, and out through the top right. Something there. There we go. And then back in through the top center. So back in through this top center one, and then we're going to tie them together. So the beginning, end, and this last little bit here. You can use like a darning needle or something like that. It makes it a little easier. I'm just sort of, I don't know, making it go through. Okay, so that's about how long it needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and clip this off. And then I'm going to start shifting some of it around so that my tie is going to be more in the center of my book here. So I need to loosen this a little bit, kind of feed it this way. There we go. And now we're just going to tie this into a square knot. And there we go. Trim off your edges. and I like it. I think it looks really cool. It's just a really nice little effect here on the inside. So now let's go ahead and start making our booklets for our inserts for our little grimoire here, our little spell book. Okay, you guys, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm realizing I actually want to have a center elastic that's holding it all together, because I just like the way this looks. And if I had a center elastic that's going to go over this sort of middle part, I think it would look really cool. And I'm not loving the silver. I wish I had kind of laid this out a little better first. I don't think I would have picked the silver hindsight. So I'm going to try to go along here and cut this off flush with the paper as best I can. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that's going to work for me. And if not, we'll figure out some way to make it work, right? We're crafters, that's what we do. Okay, that was much easier than I thought it was gonna be. I think it looks great. And now I can go ahead and use my leftovers here with this same elastic, this like lace elastic, and we'll do that as our closure. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my tools out again and punch a hole right here in the center of the book. Okay, our center grommet is now in place, and I think it looks great. And if you guys saw my other, my Traveler's Notebook tutorial, I made a little paper washer for this. I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna do it out of some chipboard here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my 1/8 inch hole punch, and I'm just gonna punch a hole here, just kind of at random. And then I'm gonna come back over it with, get this one out here, my 3/8 inch hole punch, and I'm going to center the first hole inside of the hole that I'm going to punch here with the 3/8 inch punch. There we go. And so I'm going to use that as my little washer here. So we're going to kind of thread our lace elastic through that washer as best we can. This is a lot wider material than the cording that I used last time, but it's still too thin to just think that it's going to be able to, at least I don't think it would be able to just keep from pulling through that hole. So I want to put some assurances in place that it's not going to go through the hole, and that's going to work for me. So now I'm going to thread it through my hole, through my grommet. So now it's time to move on to our inserts. I don't know if you remember or not, but I had purchased these sheets of paper from Michaels that are 24 inches long by 12 inches tall. And I thought they would make for really great little booklets. So I'm gonna just start folding them and putting them together in these booklets. So I'm gonna go through and score all of these at 8.5 inches, and we're gonna fold them, and then we'll cut off the excess. Okay, so I have 15 pieces that measure 17 inches wide by 11 inches tall, and I've scored them in half at 8.5 inches, and I'm stacking them in groups of 5. So I've got the folds are sort of nestled in here, and I'm putting them together to make these little signatures. Okay, so I've got one set here, and another one here, right here, and then on top of them I've got 4 pieces that measure 22 inches wide by 11 inches tall, and they are scored at 2.5 inches on either end and 11 inches right there in the center. And so these are going to be our covers, because I'm going to glue these down, and we're just going to make like a little pocket on the inside front cover of each of the signatures. And 3 of them are going to be for the signature covers, and 1 of them we're just going to make into like a file folder so we can put loose pieces of paper and things like that in. So how we're going to do this is we're going to need a long arm stapler, and if you don't have a long arm stapler, you can just puncture some holes in here and go through it with some upholstery thread or something like that. And you could go ahead and lace them that way, kind of almost hand stitch them that way. I'm going to use my long arm stapler because it just comes in handy for stuff like this. And we're going to feed our little bundle in here, which again is the 5 sheets that are 17 inches by 11 that are scored at 8.5, and then the 1 cover sheet that's 22 inches by 11 scored, in half at 11 inches, and then on the sides here we've got these little 2.5 inch sides that are scored that we're going to turn into some pockets. And I think I'm going to put 4 staples in these. So I'm going to do one towards the top, one towards the bottom, and then I'm going to kind of split the difference in the center with the other 2, and I'm trying my very best to line it up so that the staple is entering right on that mountain fold that we created there, okay? I'm going to come down here and do another one. Line that up there. Oh, I'm off by quite a bit there. And if you're off by enough that you think it's going to cause some issues, and I do think this one is, then I'm just going to take my little pokey tool. I'm going to go to the back side. I'm going to loosen the back side of the staples, and I'm going to have a second go at it. It's, you know, totally fine to do that. And usually the first couple of them, might have a tendency to go off a little bit, but once you get in a groove and you sort of find a little spot that is your sweet spot, then it starts moving along pretty quickly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take care of the rest of these, and I'll be right back. So now you can see where I moved that staple over from its original placement here, and those holes were quite a bit off of my line, and I was able to get it right back centered on that line again. So now I'm just simply going to fold these over, making sure that my tops and bottoms are still flush, and give it a nice firm burnishing after we've done that stapling. They're not ever going to be perfectly centered, but it's pretty good. I'm going to fold in these sides here that are going to be our little pocket sides. And then, as you can tell, you're going to have some of these pages are going to be different lengths, and that's okay. You can trim them off if you want with a straight edge and an X-Acto blade. You can use some scissors. You could just mark them with a pencil and use some scissors, or you can just leave them, and you know, it's kind of part of the character of it, right? Because a collection of papers like this, they're always going to be longer in the center and shorter on the outer parts, because you know, it takes up paper to loop around. You're going further and further out with each fold. I'm going to go ahead and clamp down these next little groupings, put the covers on them, staple them, and I'll be right back. Once you've stapled your little booklets together and we've sort of folded and burnished them, we're going to go ahead and apply some pattern paper on the inside, on the flap that gets folded over and glued down as our pocket here. And then one last thing that I want to be able to do here, just to help it to stay in place in our notebook, in our recipe book, in our spell book, right, is I'm going to take my hammer, and all of these little places where I had the underneath side of the staples, they can be a little sharp. So we're just going to tap them down, and it almost embeds them in the paper so that your finger won't catch on it. And in this case, it's so that that elastic lace won't catch on it. So we're going to get all of those embedded so I can run my finger along here, and I'm not afraid at all of it stabbing me in any way. So that's a good thing. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to come along here, and we want to make maybe a 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch cut right along that fold line. We're just going to take our X-Acto blade or finger blade and drop it down about 1/4 of an inch in. And then we're going to come out at a, maybe a 45-ish angle. I don't know, maybe not quite 45-degree angle. But we're going to come out at a little angle, and we're just going to make a little notch right here at the top and the bottom of our booklet. So we're going to be cutting all these little teeny tiny pieces of triangles out of there. But what we're left with is this little notch out of our, out of our booklet at the top and the bottom, right there at where that fold line is. And that's going to give a place for that elastic to rest and to hold our booklets and our books or our signatures or whatever you want to call them, to hold them in place where we want them to be. So once I get that little notch cut out there, that's not quite, I need to come over a little bit more in that one. There we go. Then our booklets are, they're finished, right? So we're good on that. I'm going to go ahead and give it a little burnishing. Oh, and we're having thunderstorms here, and it is Sunday night. I didn't start this project until after sometime late in the afternoon on Sunday. So usually I upload these to start, midnight on Monday, and I'm not sure I'm going to get this in because we've had some electricity flickering around. So if you hear the thunder in the background, and if I don't get this posted right away, that's why. But I will take a thunderstorm any day. We have had such dry weather for so long now, and it's nice, and I love thunderstorms, so I'm always a fan of them. So here is this little booklet that we've made, and we've just got all these blank pages that we can apply pictures to, pictures of kids trick-or-treating, pictures of different recipes that maybe we make this time of year. I do have some recipes I'm hoping to share with y'all in a couple episodes from now. So we're just gonna slip this in here right into place, sliding it on over. Oops, don't go into the pocket here. And then that is just perfect. That's what I was hoping to see. I've got 1, 2, 3 signatures here with all of these pages in. Let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 10 pages in each signature. There's pockets on the front and back cover of the signatures. And that's great. We've got 30 pages to put all sorts of scrapbooking, photos and memory keeping and journaling and recipes into, because this is really what I was hoping this could be, as more of a seasonal recipe holder. I do have one more folder to make. I forgot to do that. Let me get that put in place and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have completed it, and I'm so happy with the way this turned out. I think it is just absolutely just the cutest, spookiest thing I've ever seen. And I love the idea of having a seasonal recipe book and having it out there and serving as also a home decor option. So now that our book is completed here, and we'll just do like a quick little walkthrough of it. I think it's just super, super cute. There's plenty of room in here to make some tags. I'm gonna do some really large photo folders to put in here that we can do for different photos or recipes or things like that. I probably won't have time to do that tonight. Like I said, I got kind of a late start. And then we've got all of our signatures in here that each have 10 pages with pockets on the front and back covers. I went ahead and completed this little file folder, whatever you want to call it. This one doesn't have pages in it. It's basically a signature without pages and has some pockets in here. And so that'll be a great place to tuck in some printouts or maybe some photos, quote unquote, to be scrapbooked and to be glued in. And I'm really excited with the way this turned out. I think it's really cute and I like it a lot. Okay, crafty friends, our holder for our cookbook is ready and I'm so excited about this. I just think it looks great. I went ahead and added this little broom here. I think I got this at Dollar Tree. I know it was in a pack of 3 and unfortunately I've lost the packaging. I just had one of them left. And I went ahead and cut it down a little bit so that it would fit on here and it was a little bit better to scale. I had used some of that texture paste to try to fill the holes that were at the top of these wooden cutouts, and they were still dimpled and I still couldn't find my spackling that would have probably done a much better job there. So instead I went ahead and cut one of these spider webs from the spider web trim and put on there, and I think it looks really cute. And where I had glued this on the wrong side, where I had glued the brace for the bottom on the wrong side, was over here. And so I decided to take this same spider web trim and run along the bottom, and I like it. I think it looks great. I used these 2 inks to sort of distress it and try to give it kind of a patina and aged metallic look. This one is by Spectrum Noir. It is the gold, and then this one is the bronze color. And both of them are the Midas by Spectrum Noir. And so I just kind of went over all of that. And then we've got our cookbook here, our cookbook / memory album / I don't know what it is. It's like a notebook, collection of notebooks. It's a ginormous traveler's notebook, really, if truth be told. And I think it looks great. And the whole thing is just going to fit in here just like this. And it stands up, and I'm going to have to take pictures from a different angle because I know the camera isn't showing this, but it stands up just like that, and it's going to sit out out on my kitchen counter and serve not only as a seasonal recipe book / memory album / whatever we decide to put in it, but also as a home decor piece. And I think that looks really great. So I am super excited about the way that this has turned out, especially given the fact that I didn't even begin it until like 2:30, 3 o'clock this afternoon. So yikes, that was pushing the envelope. We do have some weather issues here tonight, and our electricity keeps going on and off and on and off. And I was going to get all dressed up and do my introduction like I've been doing the last 4 weeks. And I think I'm just not going to do it this time because I am afraid that we're going to end up with some sort of power outage or something. So that's not going to happen. So this is what I have for you guys today. I hope that you are all checking out all of the other contributors for the Sandy's 13 Frights Before Halloween collab. Again, this is week number 5. There's a total of 11 contributors that have committed to do all 13 weeks. But there are others that are kind of popping in and out as they feel like it, and they are using that hashtag Sandy's 13 Frights Before Halloween 2022, and just click on that hashtag there, and that way you can see not only the contributors that are listed in the description notes below, but you can see all the other people that are sort of coming in and feeling inspired and that are posting some little ghoulishly fun crafts that they want to share with y'all too. All right, that's what I've got for you today. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I hope you're being kind to yourselves, and I hope you're finding some joy in your journey. Thanks so much, y'all. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.